And tomorrow will officially mark 1 week since the official start of the Delphi murders trial.
Well, today, on the 6th day of the trial, the focus of the testimony shifted as the state spent the day trying to place Richard Allen at the scene of the murders. He is accused of killing Abby Williams and Libby German 7.5 years ago. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel just stepped out of the courthouse where he heard a very compelling day of testimony.
And Bob, yesterday we heard graphic testimony about how the teens died. Explain the new information that we now have about the man who now is on trial accused of killing them.
Well, today we learned how investigators zeroed in on Richard Allen, and that all started when they decided to take a closer look at a statement that Richard Allen voluntarily gave to police just 4 days after the murders. Allen gave this statement at this location, at a grocery store parking lot in Delphi. He met with state DNR officer Dan Dulin, and he told jurors today that he was assigned to interview Allen after Allen voluntarily called the Delphi murders tip line to say he had been on the Monon trails not far from the crime scene on the afternoon of the murders. Dulin testified about what Allen told him. He was on the trails between 1:30 and 3:30 on the day of the murders. He told him that Allen saw 3 girls walking on the trails, and as he walked, Allen said he was focused on the stock ticker on his cell phone. Dulin said when he interviewed Richard Allen, there was nothing that struck him as unusual. In fact, following that interview, the folder with Richard Allen's information in it was marked cleared. State and local investigators forgot all about Allen. Today, Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett told jurors information about Allen being near the crime scene got lost and, in his words, fell through the cracks until a file clerk happened to notice the information sitting in bankers' boxes 5 years later in late 2022. The jury heard that clerk describe what happened. And then former Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullin took the witness stand for the second time in this trial to explain how that discovery jump-started the investigation and how they zeroed in on Allen. He says that they discovered video of Allen's car near the Monon trails on the day of the murders, and that they interviewed Allen several times. They say one of those times, Allen, in his words, got irritated and left the interview room. During cross-examination, the defense team lashed out at Mullin, who is now a chief investigator for the prosecutor's office. The first question from defense attorney Andrew Baldwin, it wasn't a question at all, it was a statement. He said to Mullin, "You are so desperate to place Richard Allen's car traveling west on 300 North near the crime scene that just before lunch you lied to this jury." He then got Mullin to admit that Allen did not tell him that he traveled to the trails along the route that Mullin said that he did, which would bring into question really whether the state's surveillance video that they have, that they claim shows Allen's car driving near the crime scene is actually Allen. This afternoon, Sheriff Tony Liggett testified about meeting with Allen and also questioning him. He talked about serving a search warrant and searching Allen's house where they found a gun. And the state says that when they tested that gun, a bullet casing found at the crime scene matches it. And the Liggett told the jury that's what put us over the hump. Finding that bullet is what put them over the hump in the investigation. That is when things got really interesting. Joining me in court today, 13 News legal analyst Katie Jackson Lindsay. And Katie, I want to talk about what happened next in court. There was an exchange that happened where the sheriff said that even without the bullet casing found at the crime scene, they still, he feels, had enough evidence. They would have arrested Richard Allen because he said that they had witnesses who put Allen at the crime scene. And at that point, defense attorney Brad Rosie, he said, let's talk about those witnesses. And there's an exchange that I want to tell our viewers about. Rosie said, let's talk about the witnesses. He mentioned how they all gave wildly different descriptions, including Betsy Blair, who testified here earlier this week. And Rosie said Betsy Blair saw a man who was boyish and beautiful with brown poofy hair in his 20s or 30s. Her description doesn't match the description of Richard Allen. And at that point, a really surprising statement by Tony Liggett. The sheriff said, but neither do the three girls who saw him on the trail. And Rosie looked at Liggett and then the jury, and he said, exactly, right. This was testimony that I think everyone in the courtroom was surprised about. What does that testimony, hearing the sheriff say, yeah, the descriptions given by all the people who say that they placed Richard Allen out on the trail as bridge guy, doesn't really match Richard Allen sitting in the courtroom. What is that testimony? What does that do for a jury?
Well, it was extremely powerful for the defense, because anytime you can get one of your lead law enforcement investigators to agree with you as a defense attorney, that is just a powerful move and a powerful shift in the evidence. And I can't imagine that the state is happy about that particular testimony right now, because that is an issue. They have to prove Richard Allen's identity, and he just got an investigator to agree with him that the evidence is absolutely inconsistent on that fact.
And you told me earlier today, after hearing some of the questioning by the prosecutor, that you weren't necessarily thrilled about the way that questioning was happening because of certain things that were being left out?
Sure. So as a former prosecutor, I was always taught that you just put your facts out there, good or bad. We talked about this yesterday, how you got to show your scars. You just have to tell the truth as the state. And it seemed to me today that we would hear evidence from the state, and then we would get the entire picture from the defense in terms of the questions that were being asked. So it wasn't that they were putting false information out there. They were just omitting information that would have given the jury a clear picture and a full picture of what the evidence actually was.
We will hear more from Katie coming up at 6 and also at 6 o'clock. Today, we got even better view of the down the hill video where we could see Bridge Guy a whole lot better, and we could hear Abby and Libby and what Bridge Guy said on that video. We're going to tell you more about that coming up at 6. For now, we'll send it back to the studio. We're live in Delphi.
All right, Bob and Katie, thanks so much.